A man worked as a janitor cleaning schools for more than 20 years. Then one day, he walked onto the stage of America's Got Talent and won the whole thing. But here's the crazy part. Instead of using his fame to become a big star, he went back to his old cleaning job like nothing ever happened. Why did he do that? What really happened after the cameras stopped rolling? This story will show you the surprising truth that nobody saw on TV. Get ready, because what you're about to learn is completely different from what you might think. Richard Goodall was born in a city called Indianapolis, but he spent almost his whole childhood and grown-up life in a small city called Terre Haute in Indiana. He never learned music in a fancy school. He never took professional singing classes, and he never performed on any big stage except at school events. But Richard still loved to sing in the hallways of the school where he worked as a janitor. When someone asked him, "What do you do for work?" he answered, "I've been a janitor for 23 years. West Vigo Middle School is where he spent more than 20 years cleaning floors and taking care of the building." The students knew him as a quiet man whose beautiful singing voice would echo through the hallways. It was right there, on the most normal, everyday days, that his singing voice grew stronger. His voice was emotional, honest, and came from real-life experiences. The school staff once told him, "We just want you to know that you inspire our students, our teachers, and everyone in our community. West Vigo loves you, you're amazing, and don't ever give up." For many years, Richard was part of a small gospel band. A gospel band sings religious songs. They performed regularly at church events and community gatherings. The band kept performing until the COVID-19 pandemic happened in 2020. The pandemic forced the group to stop meeting and eventually break up completely. When the band broke up, Richard didn't just lose his only place to perform. He also lost one of the most important connections he had with music as an adult. Not long after that, Richard tried out for the preliminary round of a TV singing competition called The Voice. But he was eliminated early and didn't make any impression on the judges. For most people, failing like that would make them want to quit. But Richard didn't give up on singing. He kept performing classic songs during his work hours at home and at small local events around his town. During this time, Richard's personal life was pretty stable and calm. He was married to Patricia Sue Goodall, his partner for many years, before everything in his life started to change. The two of them lived a simple, quiet life. They rarely went out in public and chose to build a stable life that didn't depend on fancy or expensive things. But that peaceful foundation was later interrupted by some really big events that nobody expected. Music wasn't Richard's professional goal back then. It was more like a spiritual support, something that made him feel better, rather than something he wanted to do as a career. The people who worked with him at the school noticed this about him. A colleague at West Vigo once said in a short interview with a local radio station, he didn't sing to show off or get attention. He sang like he was just talking to himself. During this time, Richard's money situation wasn't very good either. Even though he worked full-time at his job, his income still wasn't enough to support any big dreams. Learning music professionally, buying recording equipment, or hiring a vocal coach to teach him, all of these things cost too much money for him to afford. While many people who pursue art come from well-off families with money, Richard started from the very basics: a real voice, a stable job, and long hours of practicing quietly by himself. His singing during this period was recorded informally at school parties or shared among friends through amateur videos that weren't professional quality. One of the first video clips that got shared online was him singing a song called "Don't Stop Believin'." During a student drama rehearsal at school, the video didn't go viral and become super popular right away, but it later became the first clue that helped bring Richard closer to television producers who were looking for talent. A former student once shared this memory. "Every time we walked past the hallway where he worked, we hoped we would hear a few lines of his singing. Nobody thought of him as a stranger. Everyone knew he had a special, beautiful voice." So when his name unexpectedly showed up on the contestant list of a national television singing competition, people's reaction wasn't just surprise. It was a complete shift in how the entire local community saw him and thought about him. From that moment, Richard stepped out of the familiar school hallway onto a path that nobody could have predicted or imagined. But before he had the chance to perform on the big national stage, he had to face some really personal, difficult events that most people don't know about. In 2021, Richard Goodall faced the biggest, most shocking event of his entire life. His wife, Patricia Sue Goodall, passed away from kidney cancer. Patricia was the person who had been by his side for many years, from when he was completely unknown to the public, all the way until he started to become known by more people thanks to his videos going viral online. When Patricia died, she left a huge empty space in Richard's life that nobody could ever replace. Losing a close partner, someone you love deeply, also meant that Richard had to learn how to survive alone during his weakest, most difficult moments. This tragedy happened right after the pandemic had already caused the gospel band he sang with to break up and disband. Losing both his loved one and his music community at the same time pushed Richard into a state where he felt lost and didn't know what to do. He had no place to sing anymore, and he had nobody beside him to share his feelings with. During that dark time, Richard had only one choice left: to keep music as his only support to help him get through each day, one day at a time. In this difficult situation, he met Angie Vanovan, the woman who later became his second partner and new wife. Angie wasn't just a new companion in Richard's life. She also played a really important role in lifting up his spirit and making him feel better about himself. She didn't try to change who Richard was. Instead, she helped him see the true value in his own voice and talent. Even though Richard had never believed he could do anything other than his regular cleaning job, Angie showed him he was worth more. Angie's impact didn't stop at just the spiritual and emotional level. She was the one who suggested that Richard should try to find his biological father, someone he hadn't seen in decades, actually, someone he had never even met. Before this, Richard didn't know who his father was or where he was. He didn't even really want to know. But with Angie's encouragement and support, plus using a genealogy search tool, a tool that helps you find your family members, he decided to do something he never thought was possible. In 2025, Richard officially met his biological father for the very first time. His father turned out to be a former K-9 police officer. That means he worked with police dogs who also served in the military. According to what Richard shared on social media, his father had been completely unaware that Richard even existed. Nobody had ever told his father that he had a son. The meeting wasn't just a simple reunion. It opened up a whole new branch of family that Richard never knew he had. Richard discovered he had 3 siblings, brothers and sisters who shared the same bloodline, that he had never known about before in his entire life. On his personal social media page, Richard wrote, "Thanks to Angie and Ancestry, thanks to that, I found my biological father, a man who never knew I existed. He plays drums, guitar, and mandolin. Without Angie, I would never have tried to find him again." Reuniting with his father didn't completely change Richard's whole life overnight, but it gave Richard a sense of personal completeness, like a puzzle piece finally fitting into place. This was a part of his childhood and adulthood that had always been missing. Reconnecting with his bloodline helped him close the emotional knots and unanswered questions that had existed in his heart for many years. More importantly, this reunion happened at exactly the right time, when Richard needed spiritual support to be ready to step onto a bigger stage and start performing in public in front of thousands of people. At the same time, Richard was also starting to receive many offers and opportunities from outside after his singing videos were widely shared across the internet. But in the middle of all these new and exciting things, his health wasn't completely stable. After he won America's Got Talent, Richard had to undergo surgery to treat a hernia. A hernia is a medical condition where part of your body pushes through a weak spot. This health problem forced him to take a break from his career and rest. This was a big setback and disappointment because it happened right at a time when everyone expected him to appear more often in the public eye, on TV shows and at events. The recovery period after the surgery wasn't super long, but it was enough time to make Richard stop and reconsider how fast he wanted to move forward with his new career. After he got out of the hospital, Richard adjusted his lifestyle and began to approach new opportunities at a slower, more careful pace. He was no longer rushing to accept every single invitation that came his way. Instead, he became more selective and picky about what was suitable for his physical condition and his personal circumstances. Instead of focusing on long-term plans that weren't necessarily right for him, Richard returned to his familiar approach, keeping a steady, calm pace, prioritizing his health above everything else, and letting things happen naturally without forcing them. But it was exactly when he slowed down and stopped rushing that an unexpected factor appeared in his life, taking everything in a completely different direction. At the end of 2023, a short video of Richard Goodall singing "Don't Stop Believin'" during a practice session at West Vigo Middle School began to circulate and spread on TikTok. The image quality of the video was pretty low. There was no fancy stage lighting. There was no professional microphone. It was just a simple, raw video. But the voice in that video made so many people stop scrolling and listen all the way to the end. The clip quickly reached millions and millions of views. It got widely shared on other platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. From one simple video, Richard unexpectedly caught the attention of the production team of America's Got Talent, one of the biggest talent shows in America. After the producers contacted him and they went through the whole process, Richard officially received an invitation to come audition for the show. This invitation marked the first time Richard had ever left Indiana to travel to California. Flying on an airplane to Los Angeles was actually the very first time Richard had ever flown in his entire life. Imagine that. At the audition, Richard chose to sing the exact same song that made his name known online, "Don't Stop Believin'." When he started singing and the song played, the entire panel of judges, including the famous judge Simon Cowell, reacted in a really positive way. They loved his performance. Richard received something called the Golden Buzzer. The Golden Buzzer is a special honor that allows a contestant to go straight to the live show without having to compete in the intermediate qualifying rounds. You just skip ahead. This event quickly turned Richard into a name that people noticed all across the nation, from coast to coast. His competition clip on the official YouTube channel of the show quickly reached tens of millions of views. But instead of choosing to sing trending, popular songs that everyone was listening to at the moment, Richard still chose classic ballads, older, timeless songs with a distinctly personal character that meant something to him. In the quarterfinals, that's one of the earlier competition rounds, he performed a song called "How Am I Supposed to Live Without You?" He dedicated this performance to Angie, his current wife, who had been with him from when he had nothing all the way until he was standing on the national stage. In the semifinals, the round right before the finals, he changed things up by choosing "Eye of the Tiger." This song has a much stronger rhythm and beat. It requires way more energy and intense emotions than the previous songs he had performed. The performance was considered a real breakthrough in terms of his image and style. It showed that Richard didn't only have the ability to inspire people with slow, emotional songs, he also knew how to reinvent himself and try something totally different when it was necessary. On the final night, the night that would decide the winner, Richard chose to return to the band Journey. He performed their song faithfully, a song he had sung to Angie during private, romantic moments together before he ever became famous. The final round wasn't just a competition anymore. It had become a summary of all the emotions from his entire journey on the show. What made it even more special was that in this decisive, final performance, Richard was personally joined on stage by the actual band Journey themselves. This was the first time in his life that he got to sing with the legendary band that had inspired him for so many years. The final result was announced shortly after the performance ended. Richard officially became the champion of Season 19 of America's Got Talent. Along with the championship title came a prize worth $1 million and the opportunity to perform at many major events all across the United States. Here's something really interesting. Just 6 days before the final night of the competition, Richard and Angie held their wedding ceremony in Pasadena, California. It was a major personal decision and life event that happened at exactly the same time as one of the biggest moments of his professional career. Two huge events, one private and personal, one public and professional, occurred in parallel, happening at the same time. They complemented each other, creating a complete transformation and change in Richard's life. But the changes that were happening behind the stage, away from the cameras, were not easy to deal with. Because after the final applause died down and the confetti stopped falling, Richard faced a real, serious choice about how he wanted to live his life after stepping away from the bright spotlight of the television stage. After winning America's Got Talent Season 19, Richard Goodall returned to Terre Haute, Indiana, the same place where he had worked for more than 20 years as a janitor at West Vigo Middle School. Despite having $1 million prize and a whole bunch of new opportunities spread out before him, Richard decided to continue his work as a cleaner, still mopping floors and taking care of the school building. He chose not to move to a new place. He chose not to change his workplace. And he chose not to immediately jump into a busy performance schedule traveling around the country. When people asked him, "Why are you still working at the school after becoming a national champion?" Richard simply replied, "I'm still here, but there are many things going on quietly behind the scenes." That statement clearly shows a deliberate, on-purpose choice to maintain a normal, regular life, while also keeping the door open to the opportunities that came from being in the spotlight. But choosing to keep his old job didn't mean he refused to show up at major events. Right after America's Got Talent ended, Richard was invited to perform at many notable, important stages. He performed at an Indiana Pacers basketball team game. He sang at the annual Circle of Lights lighting show in the city center. These were big community events with thousands of people. In California, he appeared on the show of Judge Howie Mandel himself, the same judge who had directly given him the golden buzzer opportunity during the audition round. The performances continued to happen at the Festival of Lights in Riverside, along with many other community events in different cities. Those appearances weren't aimed at creating media pressure or making him super famous. Instead, they were like a thank you, a way of giving back from a person who used to be an ordinary citizen and was loved by his community. In his personal posts on social media, Richard still shares pictures of himself mopping floors, checking classrooms, and standing next to his former students. He's affirming and showing everyone that his life hasn't been completely disrupted or turned upside down by fame. The city of Terre Haute also gave him a special honor. They awarded him the symbolic key to the city. This is a title that's only given to individuals who have made outstanding contributions to the community. It's a really big deal. At the same old school where he used to sing in the hallways while he was cleaning, the school held a pep rally. A pep rally is like a big celebration assembly. They did this to celebrate and congratulate him as a familiar hero who came from their own community. But in the middle of all these regular social activities and events, Richard faced a personal problem. His health wasn't stable after the competition ended. Less than a month after winning the show, Richard had to undergo surgery to treat a hernia. This medical situation put all his plans on hold for the short term. He had to stop and rest. The recovery period after surgery, although pretty short, made Richard realize something important. Maintaining his health is a key factor if he wants to go further and last longer with music as a career. After the surgery was done and he started healing, Richard began to adjust his lifestyle. He took the rest that doctors recommended. He only accepted to perform at events that were suitable for his condition and wouldn't push him too hard. In a brief conversation with the local newspaper, Richard shared, "We are enjoying the new opportunities that came our way, but we have to be careful with our time and health. We can't do everything at once." Choosing to keep things slow and steady didn't make him retreat or give up. Instead, it actually helped him stabilize his mind and better prepare himself for the stage of building a sustainable, long-lasting career. At this time, many commercial and media offers also started appearing and piling up. Book publishers contacted him about the possibility of writing a memoir, which is a book about your own life story. Some production companies also suggested making a documentary film, or buying the adaptation rights to make a movie about his life. Angie, his new wife, once hinted at the possibility of making a biopic that's a movie about a real person's life. She made a humorous, funny suggestion that Zac Efron, the famous actor, could be the one to play Richard in the movie if everything comes true. Can you imagine that? This situation opened up a unique, special kind of career development model for Richard. He was maintaining his stable job at the school, living in the same place he'd always lived, but quietly building a professional foundation in the music industry from within his normal life. And at the moment when things began to become clearer and make more sense, Richard decided to take another step further. He was ready to bring his voice to his first official music project. At the end of 2024, Richard Goodall officially released his very first debut single called "Long Time Coming." The project had been prepared quietly and carefully for many months. The recording sessions took place in Nashville, Tennessee, a city that's considered a major music production center in the United States. Nashville is famous for country music and has lots of recording studios. Through his personal social media accounts, Richard shared some behind-the-scenes images and photos from inside the studio. At the same time, he revealed parts of the production process and talked about the spirit and meaning behind the song. This song was the first product that he put his name on personally. It wasn't part of a TV show anymore. It wasn't just a community event. This was his own music, his own song. The song's title, "Long Time Coming," accurately reflects and describes the journey Richard has gone through in his life. It represents a long life of waiting, accumulating experiences, enduring hard times, and preparing for something bigger. "Long Time Coming" wasn't a breakthrough in terms of flashy image or super technical singing skills, but it was a clear confirmation and proof that Richard had entered the professional music stage, even though the path he took to get there wasn't like anyone else's path. At the same time, Richard continued to perform with a local group called the Sugar Street Band. Small local shows were still being held regularly, allowing Richard to stay close and connected to the familiar community that had always supported him. The band didn't represent a big commercial image or a corporate brand, but it was a platform, a place for Richard to practice his skills and maintain his singing form before entering larger stages in the future. In terms of business organization, Richard began working with a professional music management team. This was a significant step that showed how serious he was about shaping and building a new career in music. He didn't rush after massive, huge contracts with big record companies. Instead, he was careful and thoughtful in choosing partners and deciding how to distribute his music. His goal was to build step by step, slowly creating a solid, strong foundation instead of depending completely on short-term fame from TV shows that might fade away quickly. Another special milestone and important moment came in August 2025. Richard returned to the America's Got Talent stage for the show's 20th anniversary celebration. This was a huge event celebrating 20 years of the show being on television. Richard opened the entire show by performing "Eye of the Tiger," The same song that helped him score major points with the judges in the semifinals of his season. The performance was elaborately invested in and carefully planned. It combined Richard with many other outstanding contestants from previous seasons of the show. The performance included the drum group from season 17, the Los Osos High School dance group, a saxophonist named Avery Dixon, and many other talented artists from different seasons. This was the first time Richard performed in a national-scale performance outside of his role as just a contestant competing for a prize. It proved and demonstrated his new position in the America's Got Talent program system. He wasn't just a former winner anymore. He was now part of the show's family of performers. This event also marked the time when Richard officially changed his thinking about his long-term future and what he wanted to do with his life. In interviews that happened after this performance, Richard repeatedly mentioned the idea of retiring from his job at the school. After 23 years of being attached to West Vigo Middle School, working there day after day, he said that it was time for him to say goodbye to the job that had been his entire adult life. Although he hasn't announced the exact date when he'll officially retire, what he has shared in conversations shows that the direction has been mapped out in his mind. He knows where he's heading. He's planning his next chapter. Richard's journey is really inspiring and shows that it's never too late to follow your dreams. If you found his story touching and motivating, please hit the like button to support that spirit of never giving up. Share this video with people you know who are waiting for a late but right start in their own lives. Maybe they need to hear this story, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on more honest, quiet, but truly worthwhile stories just like this one. Now here's a question for you. Which artists would you like to see Richard collaborate with and perform with in the future? Leave a comment down below and let us know your thoughts.